Welcome, One and All Church, all campuses and online. My name is Angie, Richey, the president of Life Pacific University and a marriage and family therapist. And all of us from Life Pacific University value our partnership with One and All Church to equip others with strong biblical higher education on campus just down the street from the San Dimas campus or online anywhere in the world. We're so grateful. Pastor Jeff has taken us through a powerful series on anxiety, depression, and Jesus. And we're going to dive in today to explore the ways of Jesus that will actually help us improve our mental health. In fact, the Bible, God's word, is our instruction manual. It's our roadmap for life. And if you or someone is struggling with mental health issues, this message is for you. The questions I often get asked are this: does Jesus care about mental health? And is there healing for people with anxiety, depression, and mental health disorder? Well, the answer is yes and yes. There is a way forward, and it may look different for everyone. For some, it's counseling or medication or consistent fitness, or maybe all three. But we must equip ourselves with knowledge, resources, and tools for a way forward. Let me start by sharing an article I read this week entitled, "The 10 Worst Habits for Your Mental Health." Well, that certainly caught my attention. Here are the top 10, and let's see how we do. Number 1, perfectionism. Poor posture, who knew? Guilt. The lack of exercise. A failure mindset. Overuse of social media. Overuse of a smartphone in general. Regret. Codependency, and poor sleep. Wow, how'd you do? Well, there is hope because there is ways and habits that can help us reverse these bad habits and change the trajectory of our mental health. We need it because worldwide, common mental health disorders affect 1 in 5 adults, and major mental health disorders affect somewhere between 1 and 7% of adults. Some 10 to 20% of children and adolescents suffer from mental health disorders, and half of all mental illness, listen to this, begin at the age or by the age of 14. Because mental health disorders begin in early life and tend to be chronic, they represent the leading cause of disability worldwide. Mental health disorders shorten our lives by 10 to 20 years for those suffering with major mental disorders, and mental health problems disproportionately affect those who are disadvantaged and marginalized in society. And wherever you are today, wherever you find yourself in the mental health spectrum, I want us to remember this, Psalm 46, 1-3 and verse 10. God is our refuge, a very present help in time of trouble. Therefore we will not fear, even though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake, be still and know that I am God. Jesus gives us a way forward. So I want you to feel hope today. He's in this life with us. God being distant is a myth. He will never leave us. He is a God within. We are in Christ with all the blessings that come with him. And he looks at us through a love lens, which is always through compassion. He cares about what you and I are going through, and he wants to do something about it. As an educator and therapist, I see suffering up close and personal, but I see the joy of healing every day. You know, we as Christians are called to this work to help set people free. The data is in, the mental health crisis is getting worse, not better, and our youngest are getting hit the hardest. The deconstruction of the nuclear family, agendas in our schools, the lack of fathers in the home, sexual exposure, cyberbullying, and the selfie-taking, media-addicted culture has accelerated disruption, trauma, and disconnection from God and others, creating a crisis of significant magnitude. The bottom line is a life outside of God's design does not work. What I've learned is that anxiety, depression, and the struggles we face are symptoms of something deeper. Each is a warning sign that something is off balance, unresolved, and as Pastor Jeff defined last week, pressed down deep in our soul. God loves us each so much that he gives us these warning signs in our body that to alert us to pay attention. But we must slow down and listen. I think about pain this way. Pay attention inward now, PAIN. Unresolved issues, false beliefs, generational transmission of trauma, and pain show up as symptoms of anxiety, depression, panic attacks, insomnia, obsessive thoughts, anyone? Or physical ailments. In fact, I will never forget during a season of excessive travel, I broke out in hives. I never get hives. I didn't emotionally feel stressed, but I was certainly not getting good sleep, and I was under a lot of pressure. And simply, I was being warned. In my early 30s, I hit a wall mentally and emotionally. It sent me into a deep journey inward. The negative thoughts were strong and overwhelming persisted. I could no longer ignore them. But with the support of my family, a doctor, solid Christian counselor, and God, of course, I was able to gain new insight, build skills, break through patterns, and experience freedom through Jesus. One of the most profound books on mental health in the past decade is The Body Keeps the Score by psychiatrist and trauma therapist Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. He unpacks how painful experiences and traumas impact our brain and our body. He defines trauma this way, as not the story of something that happened back then, but the current imprint of pain, horror, and fear living inside the individual. Revelations from his book validate that the body-mind connection is real. Trauma causes physical symptoms, and in that space, the mind is not tending to the present moment. But we have the power to regulate our physiology, and he says, positive relationships are fundamental to our well-being. God used my physical pain to address deeper buried emotional pain he wanted to heal. My personal history of ignoring my body and my needs was a pattern since childhood. But we all have a story, and that has shaped us into who we are today. So to move us forward, let me provide some framework. Here's a definition of mental health. Mental health includes our emotional, our psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel and act. It also helps us determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood, adolescence, through adulthood. Now, what has shaped our mental health? I'm going to give you a framework that I think can be really helpful for you, no matter what age you are. Number one, our mental health is shaped by our biology, our genetics, our family history. What did our parents give us? What is their psychological and emotional history, not just physical? That affects us. When you go to the doctor, you share your family history. Well, how were they emotionally? How were they in the sense of their spiritual health? That transfers onto us through DNA. Number two, our psychology. Our psychology are our life experiences or our traumas, the experience that happened that shape us. It could be that you were born as a preemie, or perhaps you had the cord wrapped around your neck, or maybe as a baby, your parents faced disruption and divorced. Maybe in early childhood, you were bullied or you experienced some type of abuse that affected the way you think about life and the way you developed. You know, studies show that childhood abuse and neglect, which, by the way, are preventable, are the single most common cause of drug and alcohol abuse and significant contributor to the leading cause of, get this, death such as diabetes, heart disease, cancer, stroke, and suicide. Childhood abuse and neglect causes these things. It's always deeper. Our psychology and what we've experienced affects our mental health. And number three, our sociology. This is our environment, the families we grew up in, the culture, and the stories that shape us. It is often our age of trauma that our emotional development is halted and we try to grow, but we get stuck. Our bodies grow, but our emotions do not, and we learn to adapt to the words spoken over our lives. Our responsibilities, perhaps that we endured way too young, and the lies we believed based on our reactions to what happened. It's been said, listen up, the greatest sources of suffering are the lies we believe and tell ourselves. So I want to encourage you, have compassion for yourself and others. It may not be our fault that we are where we are today, but guess what? Now it's our responsibility, and with God's help in our communities, we can heal. Neurotheologian and psychologist Dr. Jim Wilder offers hope. Everyone on earth experienced trauma, he says, to a certain level. Some levels are higher for some than others, but they are key to understanding that in our recovery, we can recover from trauma. We all can. We can heal, and we know this is true because Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. Christ always brings death to life. Jesus gives the way forward. Jesus frequently addressed the inner struggles that people faced. One of the most famous examples is the Sermon on the Mount from Matthew chapter 5-7, where Jesus talks about blessings for the poor in spirit, those who mourn, the meek, those who hunger for thirst in righteousness, the merciful, the pure of heart, the peacemakers, and those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Jesus demonstrated compassion and empathy towards those who were suffering. He healed people with physical disabilities, mental illness, and spiritual afflictions. For example, in Mark 5, Jesus healed a man possessed by a legion of demons, which had caused him to suffer greatly. Jesus calls his followers into a new way of living, a way that is based on love, compassion, forgiveness, and boundaries, rather than on power, wealth, and status. Jesus embodied a new way and gave the bold invitation to a counterculture way of life that would provide peace, healthier relationships, and freedom from the anxieties of this world. In Matthew 11:28-30, he presents an invitation and he says this, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus invites people to come to him and rest, which suggests that it is available to all. See, a yoke is a wooden crosspiece that is fastened over the necks of two animals so that they can pull a cart or plow together in sync. See, Jesus is calling us to an alignment. He wants to yoke with us. He wants to be by our side, and he knows that his yoke is going to fit you and it's going to fit me. It's our pace. God promises rest for his people if they would trust and obey him. Unfortunately for Israel, they were never able to enjoy due to their lack of obedience. They did not embrace the ways of God. Now Jesus enters the picture with a new way of rest that they longed for. He gives us the way forward. In John 8:12, Jesus says, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Some of us feel like we're in darkness. Some of us feel like we can't see what's ahead, but Jesus provides light. He is our way forward. And Paul reminds us a powerful truth in 2 Timothy 1:7, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and a sound mind." Now that sound mind means a stable mind, one that is rooted, not chaotic. It is grounded and clear. We are given the mind of Christ. If we don't learn these new ways forward, however, we will default to unhealthy patterns and we will become vulnerable to the enemy, who is the deceiver, the father of lies, the accuser, and the one who seeks to kill, to steal, and destroy our lives, our families, and our mental health. So today, I'm going to highlight 4 ways forward modeled by Jesus that will improve our mental health. Are you ready? Get your pens out, bring your friends, because this is going to be important. Number 1, we need to embrace the gift of limits. Let me say it again. We need to embrace the gift of limits. We're overworked, malnourished, stressed out, hurried, impatient, numbed out, and social media addicted. We are not superheroes. I'm sorry to say, we just simply can't do it all. For years, I thought my personal drive and ambition were my superpowers. Signs of it occurred in early childhood when I would never take a day off when I was sick. In fact, I suppressed feelings of pain so often that I actually stopped feeling my physical body. At age 16, I landed myself right in the hospital. I just wouldn't stop going until my body stopped me cold. I believed that living on less than 5 hours of sleep a night and working 7 days a week was no big deal, but my body was keeping the score. For years, I have been in violation of myself and God, who calls his children into rhythms of rest and work. Most of us learn at an early age that we need to try to be something different, something more. So we extend ourselves by trying to go beyond the inerrant range. Perhaps we've taken on a false self or perfectionism. Maybe most of us overfunction because we want to prove our value. Ask yourself, right here and now, what drives you? It's hard to accept limitations, so we deny and reject them. Whether we admit it or not, we are often limited by what we can do or cannot do. If we are parents of young children, we have limitations in our time, in our sleep, in our freedom, or maybe all three. If we work 2 jobs, we feel limited with time and doing what we want to do. And if we're married, we may feel limited in the ability to be spontaneous. Or if we have a cold, we are limited to certain physical activity. And it is so frustrating. But sometimes our limitations can be even in more painful forms. We are limited by our finances, or we're suffering from cancer or other diseases that we are limited by treatments. Sometimes our limitations can be discouraging and overwhelming. We all have limits and we cannot ignore them. They are not a sign of sin, but our humanity. They are actually a gift from the loving Father. Jesus accepted his personal limits and lived within the disciplines. He integrated prayer and fasting and fellowship and times of solitude and silence. He celebrated and he Sabbathed. These disciplines in themselves were not the solution to what he would face, but they created space for alignment, to hear the Father's voice and be guided in the ways of God. When Jesus came, he chose to live as a human in first century Palestine. In fact, when he had opportunities to push the limits, he didn't. Think of the crowds that gathered when he healed. In fact, he didn't heal everyone. Think of the hours he could have spent teaching his disciples, but instead he would step away to pray or to rest. He ate and drank, and he could have even started his ministry before the age of 30, but he didn't. He waited. He traveled and taught for only 3 years. He set limits and lived within the constraints. He moved with grace and flexibility within those limits and allowed for interruptions for people in need. So here's just a few ways that Jesus embraced the gift of limits. 1, Jesus practiced health. He honored his physical body. Wow. He ate healthy food. He got sleep that he needed. He even took naps and he took time to relax, and he did a lot of walking. The famous missionary Elizabeth Elliot says this: we cannot give our hearts to God and keep our bodies to ourselves. We, my friends, are temples of the Holy Spirit, and he wants to work within our bodies. In fact, did you know that 20 minutes of walking can change your brain completely? It can go from tired, overwhelmed, inactive. Within 20 minutes, your brain is active, problem solving, and alive. And I know this to be true because I walked my dog a lot last weekend, and I cannot tell you. See, my dog's a little overweight, so she needs a little more exercise. And so I decided I'm going to help her be healthy. But in turn, I found my mental health totally increasing. I was sharper, I was friendlier, I was more energetic just by walking throughout the weekend. It is time to get moving. See, even the lack of sleep leads to hormone disruption, emotional instability, and cognitive impairment that wreaks havoc on our mental health, and it leads to serious disease. We need a minimum, listen up, a minimum of 8 hours a night of uninterrupted sleep. Only 1 to 3% of the population can sleep 5 hours or less without suffering some performance drop-off. We must accept the fact that we are not among the sleep elite. We need our rest. We need our sleep. Some of you, it's time to make a change tonight. The research is also clear that long hours backfire for people and companies. And the research shows that working long hours and overwork does not help us, but can lead to sleep impairment, depression, heavy drinking, diabetes, impaired memory, and heart disease. Wow, this is basic. This is about our body. Can you imagine what would change in all of us if we started prioritizing our physical health? Dr. Chris Palmer, in his recent book, Brain Energy, a revolutionary breakthrough in understanding mental health, advocates for a more integrative approach to mental disorders that relies less on medication but uses diet to heal disorders and our metabolism. And guess what? It's working. Not only is it working to heal the body, but it's healing mental health. We have to focus on our body. Jesus focused on health. Number 2, he practiced silence and solitude. We have to learn to unplug and renew. He withdrew from crowds to lonely places to be alone with the Father and his friends. He slept, renewed, and prayed. Listen, my friends, we are screen addicted, and it's tearing down our families. Do you know the APA and even the government is now recommending only 2 hours of screen time and no screen time an hour before bed? Yet most of us spend 6+ hours, maybe 8 or more, online. Multiple studies have found a strong link between heavy social media and increased anxiety, loneliness, and self-harm. And 60% of Americans say that they are not doing better since social media. We want to know what's happened to the next generation? It's called 2007 and the rise of the iPhone. We changed a generation overnight. Not only are they screen addicted, but now socially, to fit in, they have to be online. And it's hurting us. We need boundaries, we need limits. Jesus also practiced presence. He was mindful and in the moment. Jesus was present with those he was with. In fact, most of us find ourselves in the past thinking and ruminating on what we wish we should have done. Or we focus on the future, what's next. Let me tell you, if you want to improve your mental health, be in the moment. Be present, because this is where Jesus is. One thing at a time. Be present, being mindful. See, Jesus knew he couldn't be 2 places at once, and yet we think we can. Let's stop multitasking, be in the moment, and be present with those around us and those we love. It is amazing how our heart, our mind, and our spirit will calm down. Also, Jesus practiced an unhurried pace. We need to slow down. Can you imagine what the freeways would look like if we slowed down? See, Jesus was present and he was never in a hurry. We need to walk his pace and calm down. Nothing is more important than you being centered and stable on Christ, because you are so important in the world. Take time for your mental health to take care of your mind, your body, and your soul. And lastly, Jesus practiced surrender. He trusted God with the outcomes. Oh my goodness, Jesus knew his limits. He knew what he could do and not do, and he gave the rest to God. Some of you are facing challenges right now, physically, relationally, financially, and you are stressed out. In fact, you may not even be fully present listening to this message, but let me tell you, while you focus on God, while you surrender your life and the outcomes to Jesus, guess what? He is solving our problems. Most of us have trust issues. Maybe people weren't there for us, and so we think that God is not there for us. But let me tell you, God is in charge. When you give it to him, he will take care of the rest. If you've reached the point of self-sufficiency, I want you to remember this verse, 2 Corinthians 12. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly in my weakness, so that the power of Christ may rest in me. I know I do not have it all. I can't do it all. I need Jesus every day. And as I have learned to embrace my limits, my mental health has improved, my relationships have improved, and God has shown me victory in my life. So wherever you at, may I encourage you to embrace limits and radically accept your season. You're in your season. This is your job. This is your family. This is your pace of life. Radically accept and let Jesus start to embrace and intervene in every area of your life as it is. No resistance, as it is, accept the limits in your life and watch God do a miracle. Number 2, We need to embrace the gift, listen to this, the gift of boundaries. Now, some of you may not like this word at all, but let me encourage you. Jesus modeled boundaries. A boundary is a personal property line. In other words, it defines who we are and who we are not, what we are to do and what we're not to do, what your responsibilities are and are not. In Henry Cloud's book, Boundaries, he explains that boundaries are an important part of maintaining a healthy relationship and life. The lack of boundaries gets us in all kinds of trouble. How many of you have said yes and you only wish you had said no? How many of you have known that one phone call ruined your day, or not setting a limit sent you into a tailspin emotionally and psychologically? It gets us into trouble. See, boundaries help us to distinguish our property so that we can take care of it. They help us to guard our heart with all diligence. See, we need to keep things that will nurture us inside our fence and keep things that will harm us outside. Boundaries, let me tell you, are completely biblical, and they are good for us. Psalm 16:6 says, "The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places, and I have a delightful inheritance." My friends, boundaries are our friends, but often we are filled with fear and we don't know how to go forward. The first 5 books of the Bible are full of boundaries given to Israel. These boundaries are firmly followed by God, and anyone guilty of breaking these boundaries received grave consequences. The first thing God did when he brought them into the land was to set up boundaries. He gave them borders for the land that they would inherit. The goal was safety, protection, blessing, and flourishing. And throughout the Bible and even the New Testament, we see examples of boundaries that were given to others that were for our good. So, how good are you at boundaries? Let's do a quick assessment. You may have healthy boundaries if you can say no or yes, and you are okay when others say no to you. You have a strong sense of identity and you respect yourself. You expect reciprocity in a relationship and you share responsibility and power. When there's a problem, you know it's yours or when it's not. And so when it belongs to someone else, you give it back. You share personal information gradually in a mutually sharing, trusting relationship, and you don't tolerate abuse or disrespect. If you got those right, good for you. You have healthy boundaries. Well, you may have collapsed boundaries if you can't say no because you are afraid of rejection or abandonment. Maybe you're a chameleon who changes based on circumstances. You tend to be either overly responsible or controlling or passive independent. Maybe you take on other people's problems. You absorb their emotions. You rarely, perhaps, know how to step away when pressure gets too high, or you have a high tolerance for abuse or being treated with disrespect. If that's you, you have collapsed boundaries, and that causes mental health issues. Or maybe your boundaries are rigid due to pain and trauma. You're likely to say no if their request involves close interactions, or you avoid intimacy. Maybe you fear abandonment, so you avoid closeness, or you share personal information very rarely. Maybe you have difficulty identifying your own personal wants and needs. You may have trouble with boundaries because you want to be like them. You want to be like others. Maybe you struggle with boundaries because you're self-sufficient and overly responsible, and you want to be the best person you can be for them. Or maybe you're a person of your word and you're afraid that if you change your mind, you are failing them. Or maybe you're a people pleaser, or you fear that you will lose the person you say no to. Or maybe you fear that if you say no, it will create a shockwave upsetting other people you care about. These fears result in behaviors that impact our anxiety and produce depression, a feeling of hopelessness. I cannot tell you how many people I work with that are stuck because of the lack of limits and the lack of boundaries. And the goal with good therapists, good counselors, and good support systems, that they can help you advocate for yourself to relieve you from the pain that you feel. See, Jesus taught us how to set boundaries. He had personal prayer time. He taught us to be honest and direct. He said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. He set priorities and he sought to please God, not people. Some of us simply have approval addiction. Anyone here? Well, God wants to set us free because he wants you to be free to live a life of flourishing, a new way forward. We've all been in relationships where we look back and we say, we should have set a boundary. And now we're paying the price. Maybe some of you feel guilty right now because you set a boundary. You said no to someone and they're putting pressure. Let me encourage you. Work through those feelings of maybe shame or maybe guilt or exhaustion. Talk with someone and know that actually God is for you. And these boundaries are healthy. So who do you need to set a boundary with? What is your relationship with technology? Do you need someone to lock up your phone for a while? Do you need a social media fast? Do you need someone to help you delete certain apps or unfollow or block? Do you need to say no to obligations and give yourself more time and more margin? I'm working on that right now. Do you need to stop enduring abuse or shame? Do you need to put a boundary on a controlling, unhealthy relationship that has you bound in fear? Is it time to cancel a vow or promise or an agreement that is holding you hostage right now? Or is it time again to unfollow, block, delete? It's time for us to slow down and pay attention to our limits and our boundaries to increase our mental health and have a new path forward. Number 3, if we want a new way forward modeled by Jesus, let's embrace the gift of community. We are made for bonding and healthy community. Jesus modeled this. He had friends. When many were leaving him, Jesus asked the 12 if they were thinking about leaving him as well. And Peter responded, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. And Peter assured Jesus that they would not stop cheering him on. Who are your cheerleaders? Who are your people? Toward the ends of Jesus' life, he told his disciples, I now call you friends. See, Jesus had a loyal group of friends. He had a loyal group of 12, and then he had the 3, his closest. We need friends. Do not isolate. If you are dealing with mental health issues right now, it is time to lean in, not out. In 1938, Harvard researchers embarked on an 85-year-long study to find out this, what makes us happy in life. The researchers gathered health records from 724 participants from all over the world and asked detailed questions about their lives in 2-year intervals. And contrary to what we may think, it's not career achievement, it's not money, exercise, or status. Ready? The most consistent finding we've learned through 85 years of study is this. Positive relationships keep us happier, healthier, and help us live longer. Period. We need family and community. Hebrews says this, and let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and more as you see the day approaching. Basil van der Kolk says this, being able to feel safe with other people is probably the most important aspect of our mental health. Safe connections are fundamental to meaningful and satisfying lives. And as long as we feel safely held in the hearts and minds of the people who love us, we will climb mountains and cross deserts and stay up all night to finish projects. People matter. Inspiring community is critical to your growth and mental health. So I want to ask you, who are your top 3? Maybe your top 5. Who can you call upon today? Do you need a counselor, a doctor, a support group, or a life coach? Do you need church more often? We cannot forsake gathering together. Church is important. Show up. One and All has so many opportunities to connect and to be with people who love God and follow his ways. We must embrace the gift of healthy community. It is a game changer on our mental health. And lastly, number 4, are you all ready? We need to embrace the gift of gratitude. Yes, gratitude is actually a gift. If we want mental health, we need gratitude. And Jesus modeled gratitude. See, listen to this. Jesus, knowing his fate, he was always thankful. Jesus actually lived in thankfulness to God. He expressed his thanks to God publicly for the benefit of others that they might too learn to be grateful. Jesus appreciated God as the Father who watched over all of creation, even the little sparrows who were thought to be of little value. He was grateful for the wildflowers. And guess what? He was grateful for every single person he was in contact with. He thanked God for providing food, for the Father listening to him, and for the opportunity to minister to others. Jesus began and ended his prayers with words of thanks and praise to the Father. And the Lord's Prayer has taught us how to do the same. You know, he even thanked God for the opportunity to walk to the cross. Henry Nouwen says the discipline of gratitude is the explicit effort to acknowledge that all I am and have is given to me as a gift of love and a gift to be celebrated. See, the Psalms are filled with praise, which is always a weapon of war. Let me say that again. Praise is actually a spiritual weapon of war. In the Old Testament, the tribe of Judah always went first into battle. It was God's will. Why? Because Judah means praise. See, Israel defeated many enemies as praise went first. As we are starting our day, do we praise? Are we recognizing that our day is actually a battle and Jesus has given the weapons of warfare? Are we praising God and others in our homes, in our cars, on the phone, in our workplaces? It's a habit that we must form if we want victory. If we change our mindset and we focus on gratitude and we give praise, guess what? It not only changes our mind, it changes our physiology. In fact, what's so amazing that being grateful leads to happiness. The Greater Good Science Center at the University of California, Berkeley studies happiness and found that being grateful leads to this. It unshackles us from toxic emotions and has lasting effects on the brain. We're talking neuroscience. Number 2, it activates optimism and positive emotions. It relieves aches and pains in the body. Wow, isn't Jesus amazing? God is so smart to encourage us to give thanks. It actually heals our body from the inside out. Gratitude motivates us towards our personal goals. It creates more alertness and determination in the brain. It increases our spirit of generosity and empathy. In fact, we sleep better. It improves our self-esteem and our relationships with others. A personal challenge that I've learned through my studies on gratitude is that when you write a note or you send a text to someone else, it can shift our entire day. So let me encourage you, if you are down, if you are struggling, if you are feeling that you can't even get out of bed today, let me encourage you, send a text to someone you love and thank them for who they've been in your life. It could be a family, a friend, a mentor, a colleague, and watch your brain begin to change. God is amazing. These are just a few examples of the way that God's ways improve our mental health. This is not comprehensive, but it is a way forward. See, Jesus addresses mental health for us today by acknowledging not only the emotional and mental struggles we face, but he models practices that heal our very souls. As we face our own struggles today and throughout the week, may we find comfort, healing, and hope through Jesus and others as we model Jesus' way forward for all of us. I want to close with a passage on the wise and foolish builders from the Sermon on the Mount. And I know Pastor Jeff said, if you want to heal, if you want to change your mindset, spend time meditating, rereading the Sermon on the Mount. It's profound, and it will get you into a new way of life, a countercultural way of thinking about our mental health. But this is what Jesus says in Matthew 7:24-29. Therefore, anyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. I want to be wise. I want to embrace the ways of Jesus, and I want my house, my mind, and my mental health to be rooted on the rock, don't you? He goes on to say, the rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall, because it had a foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, and the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. See, when Jesus finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching because he taught as one who had authority and not as teachers of the law. See, Jesus has a countercultural way of life, and he speaks with authority because he knows that his ways work. They work then, they work now, they work for you, they work for me, they work for teens, they work for the elderly. God's ways of life can improve our mental health. They are a way forward, period. Jesus is the way. He has a plan to help us in our deepest point of need. So my question for all of us here today is, will you embrace the gift of limits? Will you embrace the gift of boundaries and do hard things? Will you embrace the gift of healthy community, this gift that God has given us? And I know it's scary and I know it's hard at times, but would you lean into the gift of community? It will change your life. And lastly, will you embrace the gift of gratitude? It's not natural. Sometimes it's hard, but let me tell you, the habit can be established in your heart, your soul, and your mind to where you begin speaking life over yourselves and others. Let me tell you, your friends will thank you. Your coworkers will thank you. They will feel the joy and the change coming from within. See, these gifts were given to all of us to heal us. They are to make us whole. And even if you embrace just one, you will begin to see your mental health improve. Now, we know that we're all in different places, so whether it's counselors, medication, fitness, embracing these gifts, sometimes we need all of them to get to our healing. But remember that the healing we need is not just fixing the symptoms. It's the deep wounds of our childhood that create the symptoms that God wants to heal. Healing is for you and me today. So let me pray a blessing over you as we embrace these gifts in a new way forward. Lord Jesus, we thank you for these gifts. Lord, we thank you that, Jesus, you modeled the way for all of us. And as we go forth into our weeks and lives, Lord, may we be reminded that, one, you care about our mental health, and two, you have a way forward that will heal us, restore us, and bring us back into community. We love you and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. God bless you.